Good evening, hello to you. Welcome to Sunday Night Satsang with myself, John Homewood.
And Michelle McLean. Hi everyone.
Hi. And just the normal ask is that you just in the comments box let us know where you are watching from, who you are, and if you have any questions, please type them up. We don't always get to them while we are speaking, but we definitely do address them afterwards. And we like getting the hearts. Thank you.
It's nice to know who's with us, so please let us know who's here, because we can just see tiny little pictures of you at the top.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
We don't know who that is.
Yeah,
Hi,
so
everyone.
we've moved our video studio.
Yeah. But we've got load
to the lounge. We've got load shedding.
It's freezing cold.
And it's cold, but we've got a lovely, great
so we've got
fire behind us.
Fireplace, yeah.
So hopefully you can feel a bit of the warmth as well.
Yeah.
Well, there's warmth coming from our hearts anyway.
It is.
Yeah, so just let us know. Hello, Elaine. Hi, Elaine from PE.
Good to have you with us.
Yeah.
Great.
And who else have we
Let's
got?
wait for a few more minutes.
Yeah.
Let's see if some more people join us.
Yeah, so tonight we're going to be talking about changing our story.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? What does changing our story mean?
We'll talk about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you for the hearts. We love getting the hearts. Yeah, thank you. And if you find what we share of value, please won't you press the like and the share button. And if you watch on YouTube, please won't you subscribe to our channel. A lot more like this on our channel, and it really does help get the word out there with the more subscribers we get. So please do press the like, share and subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please press the bell button as well, because that gives you the notifications of the new posts that we put up.
Thanks, everyone.
Claire, who else do we have?
Great. I think I saw Stella there as well.
Yeah.
That's great.
Changing our story.
Changing our story. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah. And that is the theme which we have coming up in June for our InnerSpace community,
We'll tell you a little bit more about that as well later.
About that, during the course, Thank you.
Okay, shall we start?
It's a start, and we start as we always do by entering presence. And when I say entering presence, that's not true, because, not totally correct, because presence is something we always are in. You cannot not be in the present moment. It's actually releasing the mind from the stories that it's been telling itself all through the day, that has separated its ourself and our awareness from the realization of presence. So when we start out, what we do is we withdraw our mind from all of the times and all of the places, and we become. What did South Africans do before candles? They had electricity.
Yeah. Okay, well,
So you probably missed the opening meditation. Apologies about that. But if you did miss the opening meditation, then if you can, just as we're talking, just constantly bring your awareness back to the present moment, to the breath, to the feeling the body from the inside. These are all techniques of centering ourselves in the present moment.
Okay.
So what's happening astrologically?
So we're talking about changing our minds.
What's happening with
changing
astrology?
our stories. Well, I mean, the planet of the mind, which is what creates the stories, is actually right next to the planet of change. So it's very sort of literal, but it's changing our stories.
And the planet of change is what?
Uranus.
Mm-hmm. So Mercury is near
the planet
Uranus.
of the mind.
Okay.
Yeah. And this month we have the Sun in Gemini, which is all about the mind and communication and listening and how we listen and how we speak and the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we tell about our lives as well. We just thought that would be a good theme for tonight.
It's also a theme that we're going to be pursuing in the month of June with our InnerSpace community. And if you're not a member of InnerSpace yet, please join. Go to journeysofawakening.com and sign up. Just join for a month if you want. And it's a lovely online support community. And I believe that the changes that we are currently going through and the increased changes that we're coming to, talking of changing stories, require some sort of community to support us. And many people are finding that the support is just not there from friends and family. In fact, a lot of people feel rather alone at the moment on this journey.
Yeah.
So it is important to have a community that's focused in the same direction of shared values. And that's what the InnerSpace group is really about. So if you're not a member of InnerSpace, journeysofawakening.com, and sign up for the month of June, where we will be looking far deeper into the subject that we're going to be sharing tonight, changing your stories.
Yeah, we're going to actually be, it's called rewriting your story. So we're actually going to rewrite our story.
Rewrite the story
in
that
month. It's going to be a very
month,
powerful month. So join us for the month. It's going to be a good one. So what are we talking about? Rewriting our stories or changing
our stories. Yeah, changing our stories.
So what are the stories that we've told ourselves from day one? That's a start. The stories that we've been told about ourselves, about our lives, about our characters, about whether we're acceptable people or not. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, whether we're acceptable or not, whether we're successful or not, pretty enough, thin enough, young enough.
No, I've never worried about being pretty enough.
What?
No. In fact, once I did win a baby contest. I was apparently the most beautiful baby, so there we go.
There we go.
So I was pretty once, believe it or not.
You still are, John.
Yeah, but these stories really define us. They define who we think we are. And quite often we think these stories that we're telling ourselves are carved in rock, carved in stone, and unchangeable. And they're absolutely not, because every story we tell ourselves is just a perspective. It's one story out of many stories. And I believe that the awakening process requires us to look at these stories that we're telling ourselves, and to say, well, are these stories the ones that I really want to live my life through? Because the past generally defines where we move in the future, because most people are seeing themselves on a trajectory of past to future, which isn't true, but it's the way people see themselves. So if our stories are headed in a certain direction or arise from a certain direction with certain parameters around them, they tend to define us and imprison us in a certain projected future. So now is the time, possibly, to look at what the stories are that we're telling ourselves about ourselves and about the world around us, and change those. Change those for stories that are more empowering, which are more in alignment with who we really are, authentically are.
And we can only make change when we become aware of what we want to change. So until we become aware of the stories that we tell ourselves, we're not going to know that we need to change them. So it's actually about slowing down to actually really connect with what is the story I'm telling myself in this moment. That's the place to start. You know, for somebody, maybe you've been triggered, or somebody said something, or you've received an email, or you're in traffic, or you're concerned about something. It's to stop in that moment and to actually ask yourself, what is the story that I'm telling myself right now? And you'll be amazed at the stories if you stop and tell yourself, because we don't know. And then we just go into autopilot, and it goes into a loop, because we have neural pathways and they fire each other. So if you have one main kind of theme running in your life, that storyline is going to repeat like a loop. That reactive pattern, that anxiety, that fear, that way of reacting, that way of responding to someone that you know, because there's a pattern between the two of you. And so it requires us to see that so that we can actually say, this is a pattern, it's a loop. And it becomes like an automated loop where you don't even know, but you're back in the same story again. It's the same story as yesterday and 2 weeks ago and 5 years ago and 10 years ago. And so how do we change that unless we are aware of it?
Yeah, well, awareness is the greatest agent for change.
Yeah.
You can't change something that you're not aware of.
Yeah.
So the first step in changing our stories is to be aware that we are telling ourselves certain stories. Stories about not being good enough, as you say. Stories about I'm just a loser, I'm never going to make it, I'm the one who always messes up. These are stories that we tell ourselves. And there are many, many stories that that guide our day-to-day, that inform us as to what's happening around us. These are stories of perception. And by becoming aware of the story we're telling ourselves in each and every moment, that liberates us to choose, and to choose again more wisely as to what story we want to say. For example, the story I used to tell myself for many, many years ago was that life is difficult. That was a story I told myself. Right from childhood, my life was sort of difficult. And then 20 odd years ago, I started changing that story to, rather than life is difficult, that life is great. And as I started seeing my life that way, I found more and more evidence that that new story was true, that life actually is great, that there's always a lesson in every adversity, there's always opportunity for growth in all calamities in life. And so as I changed that story about life not being fair, so I started to take advantage of the new direction that new way of seeing enabled me to move in. So the first step in this is to identify the stories that we're telling ourselves. And the way we do it is moment to moment to moment, as we move through our day. Stop. Come back into the present moment. And say, what story am I telling myself at the moment? Well, I'm telling myself that the municipality is actually inept because they haven't filled the potholes.
And they should.
That's the story I'm telling myself in that moment. And just watch. You look down there as you pass people on the street. Everyone that you see, you tell yourself a story about that person. Is that story true? No, of course it's not true. It's just a perception in that moment. Well, does the story I'm telling myself about those people make me feel uplifted and joyful, or does it bring me down? And as we become aware of those stories, we're then empowered in each and every moment to change that story.
And it is a practice, because you are, each time you make a choice to change the story, you are reprogramming your neurology. That's what's happening. So you're actually making a new neural pathway. And to strengthen that neural pathway, you've got to repeat that. So if you're inclined to go into a same old story line, that's a very sort of obvious sign that you're actually in one of those loops. So in one of those loops, one of the powerful things that you can do is to change state. So if you're in that loop and you find yourself going into the anxiety or the fear or the anger or the whatever it is, it's to actually notice it, which you've got to bring yourself back to presence to notice it, because you're not going to notice it if you're stuck up here. So you bring yourself back to presence, and then you actually change state. So you could get up and walk around, for example. Just change something. Sit up, stand up. Just change state a bit so that it interrupts the state. It interrupts the pattern. Otherwise it just goes on a loop. And before you know it, you're right back in the same pattern. It's like a rut. It's like those wheels where you're actually driving along a dirt road and the wheels go into the rut, and then they come and actually fill some sand up, we know, because we live on a dirt road, and then the first rains, that rut's back again. It's the rut that you actually get into. And when you're in it, it's a little bit late to change it, because you don't know that you're in it. You're just caught up in the rut of that pattern. So it needs to have a pattern interrupt for you to actually say, no, hang on, my wheels have gone back into this rut again. And this road doesn't take me to anything positive, because we know. So that's a good sign of, I'm actually going to move my wheels out of that rut and actually move it into somewhere else. But as always, it starts with noticing and awareness. And you only notice an awareness in the present moment, now.
Yeah, that pattern interrupt that you spoke about is presence. And presence is awareness. So being aware of the stories that we're telling ourselves in this moment, that awareness is enough to open up an opportunity to put our hands on the steering wheel and steer ourselves in a different direction. It's not what you know is the problem, it's what you don't know. These patterns, if you don't know that you're telling yourself these stories, they rule you. But as you start to become aware of the stories that you're telling yourself, that awareness is enough to empower you through the present moment to choose a new story that you're telling yourself. And some of these stories, you mentioned earlier, come from way back. They come from childhood. They come from teachers.
Hugely.
A teacher telling you you're not good enough, or you pull yourself together, or focus, or whatever. Those are stories that we hold on to as a self-identity, and they become me. They're not you. They're just a story. And as we become aware of those stories, so we in fact, the awareness that's aware of the stories is a self-awakening. It's an awakening process, because the awareness that's aware of the story is your true essence, your true identity, which is being. So the more that we are able to question the stories in the moment, the more we're actually able to step back into the true essence of who and what we are, which is a human being, not so much the human doing, but the human being, which is our sacred essence.
And it's often stories about ourselves, but it's also often stories about other people. It's conditioning that we've come in with, or being taught very early. For example, one of the ones that I was taught was, money doesn't grow on trees, and there's never enough. Or you can't trust men, which was another one. That's a pretty generalized statement, but it was one that was repeatedly throughout my childhood, until such time as I got to an age where I realized that was actually a narrative that I told myself. So if I told myself that narrative, well, yes, you couldn't trust men, because that was what I believed. So it became the reality. And then you even attract people that you might not be trustworthy.
Yeah.
So it's those old patterns that we actually taught, or sort of passed down, if you like, that we never really question until we realize that, God, I don't know if that's actually true, and I don't know if it's real, and I don't know if it's actually mine.
Or is it relevant?
Or it's relevant. So it's the big ones and it's the little ones, but they run our lives. As John said, when you're in that pattern, it's the unconscious. It's running your life. So we've got to bring consciousness to that pattern, or to those patterns, and you can only do that in the moment. So as you feel yourself, for me, it's the moment that you feel triggered. So in that moment, you might feel something which is, I feel fearful, or I feel myself closing down, or I feel my heart beating more, or I break out into a cold sweat about something. That's the moment to actually look and see what's happening. It's not just by the by, I haven't suddenly broken up into a cold sweat for nothing. There's something going on in my head which has actually led me to a story which has probably reminded me of something that happened before. So, you might be walking down a road and see a blue car, and suddenly you find yourself sort of off. If you had to unpack that, you might find that there was a time long ago when there was a blue car and there was a difficult situation with the blue car. I'm being very literal. But that's how it works. Or a piece of music, or a smell, or a sound, or a person who reminds you of something else. Now, you don't have to track it down to that, but it's just to see, I've been triggered, and there's a story I'm telling myself right now.
Yeah, it's whenever you have a strong emotional response, that's the moment to look and see, what story am I telling myself in this moment. So that's a good barometer. There's this upwelling of emotion within me. Okay? This emotion of insecurity or rage or guilt or
sadness,
grief or sadness, whatever it is, that's fine. That's the moment you stop, you pause, and you say to yourself, what story am I telling myself right now? And then there's an awareness of that story. And through that awareness, you can rewrite that story. That's so powerful. It's so powerful. And with rewriting your story, you change the emotion, and you also change the actual reality that you're in, because most reality is a perceptual reality. And as we change our perceptions, so we change the world around us. And that's, we know that from a physical point of view, from quantum physics, that what we think and what we feel, particularly what we feel, influences the physical world around us. So if we have the internal environment that says, I'm not good enough, That's my story. I always mess up. Then that will project itself out physically into the universe around us. Never mind it being the internal perception that we're having, it actually manifests objectively in the world around us, that story.
Yeah, even if we sort of see the world around us as a terrible place. I mean, I spoke to someone yesterday and he said, I don't trust people at all. I don't like people. People let me down. And so that's his lens through which he sees the world, that he expects people to let them down. And so until he becomes aware of that story, that is going to be his reality. People are going to let him down because that's what he believes they will do. And so you can't change that until you know it. You know? So it's the stories we tell ourselves without even knowing that we're telling ourselves the stories. But we are telling the stories.
Yeah, this process that we're going through at the moment, it can be called the apocalypse, which is the revealing of the hidden truth. And part of that revealing, never mind all the stuff coming out of the woodwork at the moment, all the horror stories about the world and the way the world is run, but at the same time it's also a revealing of our own power, of the power we have within us to create a new world, to create a new vision, to create a new experience for ourselves and for our loved ones around ourselves. And part of that, well, the main part of that is the awareness of the power of presence, the awareness of the power of awareness itself. And as we empower ourselves with that awareness, we can use awareness to change the reality, to change the internal environment, but also the external environment. But it does take a moment to stop, pause, and say, what are the stories I'm telling myself in this moment? And then choose a new story, a happier story, a more joyful story, a more loving story, a more caring story, a more kind story in that moment. And those new stories that we tell ourselves will definitely create a better world for yourself to experience, and also those that you come in contact with on a regular basis. You will change the way you interact with them, and you will become, as Gandhi said, you'll become the peace that you want to see in the world. You become an element, a light worker, a so-called a light worker, because now the light is coming on. The light of your awareness is shining through the subconscious mind, shining through the matrix of the mind, and empowering you to become a conscious co-creator with life for a whole new world to be born.
And you spoke about relationships there and how your interactions change. And I think we're often not aware of the stories we're telling us about ourselves, about somebody else in our lives. So you might have a day where you don't connect very well with your child or your husband or your employers or your employees, and you just feel that there's a bit of a disconnect. And you'll probably find that there's a story that you're telling yourselves about that. So, and then you don't say anything, and then there's assumptions made. So there's a sort of a separation, and you're not gelling. There's not a connection, and the one person's got a story in their mind, the other one's got a story, and the two stories aren't the same. So the one person is thinking, he doesn't love me anymore, and the other one, the man, for example, might be thinking about how to fix the car. He's not actually ignoring the woman. I'm just giving you an example, but there's a disconnect because of the different stories that we're actually telling ourselves, and until we actually come together and say what's actually going on here, that's when we realize that, actually the story I was telling myself about what was going on actually wasn't going on. That was just a story I was telling myself.
Yeah, so it's to be aware of what the story is.
Yeah. As well, but it's also the open communication.
Yeah, but to be aware of that as much as we're telling ourselves stories, the other people are telling stories about us. That's right.
It's to actually, you can actually integrate that into in relationships. Is, if you find yourself into some kind of reactive mode, to actually stop and take your partner aside or whoever it is aside and say, the story I'm telling myself right now about you is this. And allow the person to actually say whether that's true or not. Because very often it's not true.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, if it is true, it'll open up some kind of dialogue or it'll open up some kind of deeper communication.
Yeah, and I think a powerful part of this changing our stories is to listen to what the other person's story is right now.
Yeah.
So if there's a conflict in a relationship, and I say it could be any relationship, reach out and say, what story are you saying about me in your mind right now? What is the story that you're telling yourself about this particular situation? And then be still and quiet enough to truly listen. And when I say truly listen, I don't mean listen with the need to respond or a need to justify. Just listen. Just be the space and hold the space for the other person to tell you what their story is. What is their perspective on this particular moment or on this interaction? Listen. And if you are truly open and truly in a state of open receptivity to their story, a state of vulnerability, they will feel that. And they will be more inclined to share what is really going on in their head about the situation, because it's never the situation that's the problem. It's our thoughts about the situation. And there's a line from A Course in Miracles that says, you're never upset for the reason you think you are. There's another story going on behind the situation. And if you are strong and able enough to hold the space for the other person to express their story, as they start to speak, they will find, oh my goodness me, it wasn't that story, it was the deeper story that I was telling myself. And they will hear the words coming out of their mouth. And in that moment, they will become aware of that story, which they weren't really fully aware of before. By holding that space, you help not only yourself to become more awake, more conscious, more loving, more caring, but you actually help those around you to become more conscious, more caring, more empathetic, more connected. And isn't connection what we're all looking for? I mean, the underlying drive for most people on this planet is love. And what is love but the sense of connection? And so by holding the space for both ourselves and other people to identify the stories that we're saying, we're opening a portal for love to flow in. And love is the healing balm for all conflict, all relationship challenges can be healed through an opening to love.
And I think it's also just important to mention there, if you're holding a space for someone else to say what their story is, what they're thinking at that moment, is not to then say, well, that's ridiculous, because that's what happens. So the one person will say, the story I'm telling myself about you or about us is this. It's to hold a space for it, which means, oh, thank you for telling me that. It's not to then say, well, you really shouldn't be thinking that because that's stupid. Because it's not stupid to the person who's telling you that. For the person who's telling you that, it's very real. And as they start to talk, as John said, if you're holding that space, as they start to talk, they'll realize that actually the story is, for example, you've been ignoring me. The story I'm telling myself is that you don't love me anymore, that you're going to leave me, and that means that I'm no good and I'm just a waste of breath, or whatever it is. But you'll find that you'll actually go down into a little spiral based on what you assume is going on for the other person, very often.
Yeah, and a way to truly listen, to allow them the safety to express themselves, is you into your state of presence, your stillness within. And then from that state, when they have finished speaking, telling you their story, then a good way is not to justify your position or to say, as Michelle said, that their story is completely wrong, but to actually repeat the story back to them.
Yeah.
So they can hear that you, first of all, heard what they were saying, but secondly, when they hear you repeating the story back to them, they say, well, no, that's not actually reality. It's not real. It's actually quite a silly story I was saying there. And that just opens us up to a greater level of awareness, and with awareness comes change. We don't have to fix. We just have to be aware.
Yeah, it's just to be aware of the stories we tell ourselves about, anything. The stories that we repeat to ourselves. So you get up in the morning and you say, oh, I'm looking old, or I'm really not feeling good. And that story that keeps repeating. Or I'm very tired. Yeah, I'm very tired, Well, then you're retired. That's how powerful those thoughts are. They will then influence the day, and on a macrocosm, it influences our whole life. So whatever we're saying in the moment is actually influencing our future and actually rolling out and radiating into our whole life. So what are the words we're using towards ourselves? What are the words we're using, or the thoughts we're thinking about ourselves and the people around us and the government and this and that? Do we see the world as a terrible place? And I mean, it's difficult not to see the world as a crazy place sometimes. But does it help to actually constantly say the world's gone mad? Because there's parts of the world that aren't mad at all. There are parts of the world that are beautiful. Just go into nature. There's no madness there. It's beautiful. It's balanced. It's harmonious. So it's to try to focus on the good stuff and be aware of what's going on as well, but not to focus there and constantly say, everything's going to hell in a handbasket, which on the surface it does look like that, but there's a lot that isn't.
Yeah. There's a huge awakening taking place in the planet at the moment, and that awakening requires people to let go of their old stories. And, I always say it's easier to wake up from a nightmare than a comfortable dream. So if your story is a nightmare, well, that's beautiful, because there's greater incentive to want to wake up from that nightmare. So even the challenges and the problems in the world out there, as bad as they may seem, are absolutely perfect. They're perfect for the awakening of the whole of humanity. That's the perfection in it. And one of the things I can definitely suggest is, if your story is a horror movie, if your story is a terrible drama, change it into a comedy. Rewrite your story in a way that's humorous, because honestly, humor cracks through the ego, as long as not sort of one of those vindictive, spiteful humor that people do have. But if one has just the hilarity of the silliness of the story that we've been telling ourselves, and the story of life around us, if you can start to see the humor in it, you take it lighter. As you take your story lighter, you become more enlightened. So there's a great incentive to become more humorous in the way that we look at ourselves and we look at the world around us. Change the story into a comedy rather than the drama that it used to be.
Yeah, and I think when the world does seem a bit odd and strange, it's almost another opportunity to see what's really real and what's true and what we value. When you see things sort of going in the opposite direction in many respects, it's to say, well, what do I value? It's clarifying that for people. It's saying, that's definitely not the way that I will be going. I prefer to be here in this environment, in this state of mind. Not that. I don't want to be more separate. I want to be more unified. So the more the world separates or tries to separate people, it actually, in a way, can work against the desire to separate us by actually bringing us together, closer, and to create unity as opposed to separation. Because you can see the madness. So when you see the madness, you can make new choices.
Yeah, they say that only love is real, all else is an illusion. So love is the only reality. And if you can start to see your story through the eyes of love instead of through the eyes of fear, your life will change. And not only your life, because we're all connected. That's what the perception of love is. Love is a sense of oneness. So as we change our story, we change the story for all of reality. And that's the feeling of connection.
Yeah. So we're going to be working with this, as we mentioned, in our InnerSpace community, but we're going to be rewriting our story.
So in a very practical way.
Sitting down and rewriting our story.
Yeah.
So our life story.
Yeah.
What have we been telling ourselves? We're going to tell the story and then we're going to rewrite it. And see what changes. Because it does change.
You will see a lot changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a very powerful
So it's a very powerful month. That's the month of June for our InnerSpace, which, as I mentioned earlier, is available. You can sign up at journeysofawakening.com and click the InnerSpace offering. and join us, even just if it's just for the month of June. We'd love to have you part of the group on an ongoing basis, but just try it out for a month and join us there.
And there's journaling work with this month particularly, and there's a meditation, there's an affirmation, and then we meet twice a month on Zoom for 90 minutes, and we do quite a lot of one-on-one coaching on the Zoom calls. So you get to actually work the material more.
So if you're going through a particular issue in your life, we look at the theme for the month and we look at where you're at and we work through your particular challenge in terms of the theme. And it's amazing at how synchronistically the challenges seem to be solvable through that particular month theme that we're working with.
And those are aligned astrologically a little bit as well. So we theme the energies of it according to what's going on in the stars, in the cosmos. So that's wonderful. And then next week we won't be here because we'll be at the Buddhist Retreat Center. We're running a retreat there at the BRC. It's our annual retreat. The BRC, for those who don't know, the Buddhist Retreat Center was set up 40 odd years ago. It's in the rolling foothills of the Drakensberg Mountains in KwaZulu-Natal. South Africa was voted by CNN as one of the top 10 retreat centers in the world. So there may still be some space available, not too sure, because the bookings are all done through the Buddhist Retreat Center. We don't handle the bookings there at all. And their food is amazing, the environment's amazing, peaceful, relaxing. So if you're in need of a soul recharge, then do join us next Friday. There are 2 modules. There's from Friday evening until Sunday lunchtime. And then the second module is Sunday lunchtime till Tuesday lunchtime. And you can just do the first module. You don't have to do the second module. So if time is of the essence and you can only spend the weekend with us, that's fine. But it is far more beneficial to work through the 2 modules with us, and that's from Friday evening until Tuesday lunchtime. That's the 2nd till the 6th of June, and all inquiries have to go directly to the Buddhist Retreat Center in Ekopo. And you can just find that online. It's easy to find. Just type in Buddhist Retreat Center.
And the theme of our retreat.
That's the Sacred Union.
Sacred Union. Yes, Sacred Union. So if you're interested in balancing the male and female energies and coming back to that Sacred Union, then do join us. It's worth going just for the food alone anyway.
That's amazing. Well, we really eat well there. It's beautiful food.
Beautiful.
The lunches are astoundingly good.
Amazing walks in nature there as well. Wow, it's a beautiful place.
Thanks for joining us. I'm glad you found us again. Don't know what happened to the second one. That just disappeared into the ether.
It did rather.
Okay. I'm going to do a short meditation to take us out tonight.
And we're going to choose a card for the evening.
Let's choose a card.
I have an affirmation, a whole lot of affirmation cards. Michelle's going to choose one. Let's see what you choose for the week ahead. Well, it's chosen by life, actually. Beautiful. Beautiful one for the week ahead. Really good. It's one of my favorites.
Alright, so just settle down, if you're not settled down already, and take a beautiful deep breath in, and then a releasing, relaxing breath out, and just let the breath go. And another deep breath in, and on the out breath, blow the air through your mouth as if you're blowing through a straw. Let the air all go. As we breathe out, we balance and relax the parasympathetic nervous system. So just in your own time now, make your out breath longer than your in breath. So you could breathe in for 4 and hold for a second, and then breathe out for 6 or 7. And each out breath, just allow your body to relax a little bit more and a little bit more. Allowing yourself to just drop into this beautiful present moment. Like a feather drifting through the air, very softly starting to drift and float towards a very, very calm pond of water. And allow that feather to just land very softly on the water. Very serene, very calm. Allow yourself to float just like that feather. Nowhere to go, just this. Softening into this moment. Just feeling what you can feel in this moment. Bringing awareness to your body sensations, just now, right now. Becoming aware of any tension that you might be holding anywhere in your body. And if you find a place that you're holding tension, breathe into that place and then let it go. Just release it, relax it, and let it go. And then bring your attention back to your body. And you might adjust your posture. You might open your hands or rub your hands together. Just become more aware of how you're feeling in this moment. And breathe into that area again and then release. Relax. Let go. Connecting with the sounds that you can hear in the room that you're sitting in. Full attention on the sounds. And then bringing attention to your breath as you breathe in and out. Just noticing if your mind starts to wander to the next thing that you need to do. And as you start to notice, gently bring your focus back to your breath. Very gently, like you were taking a child by the hand and leading them away from a fire. Bringing your attention back to your breath. Back to the out-breath, back to the softening into the moment. The breath is a wonderful anchor because it's always here. There's nowhere you have to go to get it. You just need to sink back into it. Remembering that the out-breath, being longer, relaxes the whole system. But during your busy days, during the week, keep bringing yourself back to this place. And you'll find if you bring yourself back to this soft place, your heart opens. You're more present. You're wiser. You make better decisions. And life will flow more. So the practice is simple. As you find yourself wandering off, you see that you've wandered off and you bring yourself back. That is the awareness, and that is the practice. There's no judgment about wandering off or the mind being busy. It's just noticing it and bringing it back. Bringing yourself back to this moment. Right now, right here. This breath that you're taking. the sensation that you're feeling in your body. This temperature of the room. The feelings that you can feel in your hands. What you can see behind your eyes. Notice how you bring yourself into the moment. How you really feel more. You might feel more sensations in your hands, for example. And as you drift into this present moment, allow your focus to come to your heart. And consciously soften the center of you, the meeting point between Father Sky and Mother Earth, between the masculine and the feminine, this beautiful place of union. And from this place, our affirmation card for the week is I love. So just let those words really penetrate and seep into your being. I love. You might even put your hand on your heart and just really feel that. I love. So each time this week you feel that yourself has been triggered or has gone off on a story, bring yourself back. Breathe and release. And soften into I love. And take a deep breath in and releasing breath out. And you can open your eyes whenever you're ready. Or not. Keep them closed.
That's so powerful. I love. I'll take a photograph and put that onto the Facebook page. You know, so many people have the idea that I want love, I need love, or I have to give love. But just a simple statement, I love. That's it. I love. Beautiful. I love. That's so beautiful. Yeah. That's a great way of changing the story. I love. Beautiful.
It really is.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for sharing your energy with us and with the universe. Have a beautiful week further, and we'll catch up with you in 2 weeks' time. That's if we don't see you at the Buddhist Retreat Center. Lots of love.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.